Oh yeah. Yo, they call me the Earnest Defarge. You know I'm in charge. I don't care what my wife thinks. In the sea of rationale she sinks. It's not about the vengeance. It's not about the gore you see. It's not about making the number of marquees go 4 to 3. It's all about the info, the facts, the data. You don't know what my men will do to you later. But you know in the end, I'll get what I want. What I can do to you would make Satan grunt in agony. What you did to me, it wasn't right. Taking control of the peasants because we ain't so bright. Nah, it's not how we roll, B. That ain't G. You know how we do in St. Antone. Yeah. Defarge at large. It's my jam. Ah, yeah. We out. That song pretty much sums up my views and who I am. That's why I like it. You see, I usually don't get to voice my opinions. My wife controlled me. But now, I get to say what I want with the fresh beats that match my style. Static and not developed. And the revolution's under my command. No one else's now that Madame's dead. Good riddance. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Allow me to explain how I got where I am today. It all started in high school. I was always teased for being too short and practical, too rational. I was constantly persecuted and thought at an early age that doing things for everyone else would make them like me more. So I started supplying drinks for free at parties. I was soon known as the king of wine because I knew where to get the fine business beverages. I like that title, king. Kings don't get made fun of. Anyway, soon after high school I got married because I was forced to. I couldn't go to college because I was too poor, and soon I was wed to Madame Peasant Woman. Early in the marriage I saw that she was domineering. She was constantly talking about taking over France, and I soon became the pawn for her agenda. Saint Antone was in revolt, and the revolution was a success. We were unstoppable. Then, Madame was killed by a large lady, and here I am. I'm a free man, and I can finally run this revolution the way it should have been ran. For some reason, my psychologist saw this coming. I saw him a couple weeks before Madame was killed. A psych report from La Forge Mental Hospital. This man, Monsieur Earnest Defarge, came to me on the 17th of July, 1766, for serious help. He claimed to having a recurring nightmare. As the nightmare wakes him up, he always finds his face right next to his wife. He could not get anything done during the day because he cannot stop thinking about this dream. The nightmare goes as follows. Defarge is in jail with fellow revolutionaries, whom he calls Jacques. The jail is guarded by several aristocratic figures of France, and these men never treat the revolutionaries with disrespect. One night, the Jacques hatch a devious plan to get out of the jail. The next day, they break out of jail, and instead of escaping, they torture the gaolers of the jail. Defarge does not understand why they do this, because he does not remember the gaolers ever treating the inmates poorly. He would rather use the jail keepers as sources of advice and information. He and the other revolutionaries still do not know where they are exactly. Yet the chaos continues. The revolutionaries continue to behead the gaolers for what seems like no reason. Defarge's wife is especially brutal. She drags men by their hair and cuts them in several places to watch them bleed. Defarge is horrified at this act of utter violence and cannot believe that his wife would do such a thing. And then, out of the blue, a rock from the ceiling of the building falls and knocks Madame Defarge unconscious. The rest of the revolutionaries decide to leave the prison with no information whatsoever and no guards alive. As the revolutionaries leave the building, they decide to burn down the prison. Defarge screams at them to refrain from this action, but they still do not listen. He watched the fire start to engulf the building, and feels lighter and lighter as the flames grow higher and higher. This is when Defarge wakes up in a cold sweat. I think this man is stuck in a bad situation. He is a man that does not know what he really wants. He says he feels safe while in the jail, but he also says that at the end of the dream, he feels as if a huge weight is lifted off his shoulders as the jail goes up in flames. Defarge secretly, bitterly despises his wife, like he despises the revolutionaries. He does not like the crude, barbaric actions that the Jacques use, even though he may not admit to it. He wants control and seeks a more peaceful, practical way of dealing with the aristocracy problem. The lifting of a burden, he feels, is the problem he has with his wife receding as she goes up in flames. He believes that she is too grotesque and strict on policy, and the only real freedom he will ever get is from distancing himself from his wife. He cannot be free simply by revolting, if that is what he wishes to do. Really, although he may not know, he does not want a revolution. The omnipresent Madame Defarge distorts his conscious thoughts and makes him think that he wants to revolt. He should spend more time alone to reflect on what he wants in his life. He needs to be a more individual person and let his thoughts be heard. If Madame is manipulating him, then he must discontinue from being her little puppet. That is all. Well, that wraps it up. That's Jacques Defarge's life.
Earnest Donald Defarge, 79 years of age, died as a victim of homicide. A widower since the age of 66, Defarge spent the final 13 years of his life living in his wine shop and home in Saint Antoine. Defarge continued to lead the revolution against the aristocracy without his wife, who was notorious for having a sanguinary personality. Nevertheless, Defarge was a peaceful man, but his more radical counterparts did not welcome his personality. After his wife died, he was the sole leader of the Jacquerie, a revolutionary group of French peasants, and the revolt in France came to a screeching halt. Revolutionaries were livid that their leader wanted to make amends to the aristocracy instead of chopping off noble heads. Last month, a Jacques was so angry with where the revolution was going that he snuck into Defarge's home and shot him in his sleep. This poor man's tragic flaw was being in the wrong situation at the wrong time. He was the last of his family, and few mourn his passing. One of his bosses, Dr. Manette, says of his untimely death, "He was a good man, a great man. After all of his suffering, he finally figured out who he wanted to be. I terribly mourn his loss, but I know he lived the life he wanted to live."